Hey everybody, we'll get started here in just about 30 seconds. I see a lot of folks are coming in, so I want to give everybody a chance to join us, and then we'll get started here shortly. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Resource Management Institute's Quarter 1 Power Up session on showing the value of RM to your organization. My name is Nick Cochran, and I'm a director with the Resource Management Institute. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. We have a great topic planned, great speaker, and so I think we've got a good session in store for us. Before we get to that, I do want to give a special thanks to our sponsors for this event. So you can see them there at the bottom of the screen, Big Time and Cantata. We appreciate their help and support in making this event and many of our other events possible as well. So our game plan for today's session, I'm going to give us a brief introduction to the RMI for those of you who may be new to us. Then I'm going to give a bit of perspective on our topic for today. And then I'm going to turn it over to the featured speaker of the half hour here. We got Gary Ward from Guidewire Software. Gary's also an advisory board member to the RMI, and I know he's got some great content planned for you. And then I'll come back and share just a few of our upcoming events, training opportunities, couple of logistical items here. We will welcome questions along the way, so you should see a Q&A panel there in your Zoom toolbar. We do only have 30 minutes, so I can't guarantee that we'll have a lot of time at the end to take those, but certainly submit those questions, and if appropriate, we'll take those offline and make sure we handle those. I'll also be uploading a copy of these slides throughout the presentation, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll make sure we upload that. We'll also upload the recording and the slides to our website over the next day or so. So for those of you that are new to the Resource Management Institute, I do want to tell you just a little bit about us. The RMI was established in 2016, and since then we've grown to over 3,000 members, so a pretty large community that we've got, all dedicated to resource management. So again, we're 100% dedicated to the advancement of resource management and workforce management thought leadership, best practices, and standards. We do that through a number of ways. We've got our quarterly market research, of which I'm going to share a little bit of data from that here in just a minute. We have white papers, we have industry collaboration events just like this one, as well as some others that I'll mention later on. We also have a globally recognized certification called RMCP, where we teach our just-in-time resourcing brand of global resource management. If you haven't joined the RMI yet, I would like to invite you to do so. We're always welcoming new members. You can go out to our website. It's listed there at the bottom of the screen, resourcemanagementinstitute.com. And then you can see in the top right, we've got it kind of that green line around it. You can see the join button. Go ahead and hit that. And again, as you do that, then you'll have access to a lot of good resources like white papers, some of our market research. You can go back and review some of the old market research that we've gone through. You get access to previous recordings, so different events, different power-up sessions that we've done in the past, and you'll also get invited to future events. And so just share a little bit of information with us, and we'll be happy to kind of get you in our network and make sure that you're aware of all of the good things going on with the RMI. And the best part is it's free. So it's all free to join. So go ahead and do that. Also share with your colleagues and be sure to get them involved as well. So I do want to just take a minute here to set the stage for us, because this topic does come up, fairly often in the course of our conversations with members as well as in our RMCP classes. We hear resource managers and RM leaders talk about their challenge in getting the proper buy-in for the investment in RM in their organization. So as a result of that, you can see some data here on the screen. So this actually is hot off the presses in our Q1 survey. We asked the question, what are the biggest inhibitors to effective resource management? And so you can see there the percentage of participants who said one of their largest inhibitors is the lack of organizational and/or executive support was over half. So 51% said that was one of their biggest inhibitors. Additionally, if we think about resource management in most organizations, it is viewed as an operational cost to the organization. So unfortunately, we've also talked to some other member organizations that are trimming or eliminating resource management functions due to some cost-cutting measures. So how do we work to get that leadership buy-in? We can all, if we sit in the resource management space, we can talk to the value. We understand the value that resource management can bring, but how do we show that value? We've got to find ways to articulate and demonstrate the value that resource management can bring to our organizations. And so with that, I would like to turn things over to Gary Ward to share some of his thoughts on how we can do this in our organizations. So Gary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nick. You can hear me okay?
Yes, sounds great.
Excellent. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session on how to show the value of ORM to your organization. Anyone that registered for this Power Up would have read in the description an incredibly important statement, and Nick just touched on it again there, right? Those in resource management innately understand the value ORM provides. But how do you effectively communicate that to stakeholders who may not immediately recognize it? And what's clear from that statement and the market research that Nick just provided there on the 51% respondents, we find ourselves in a position really of needing to address this immediately, right? And with some level of rigor, autonomy, and self-empowerment, right? And what's clear is that this needs to happen from the inside out. So I'm hoping to provide some insight in that regard today, and make no doubt about it. When it comes to resource management, there is always some level of resistance, which means we have more work to do in this area, okay? So a little bit about me. I am RMCP certified. I've been an advisory board member for the past 4 years. I'm the founding member and director of a centralized global RMO at Guidewire Software, who are the market leader in the insurtech space, and I've worked there for over 8 years. The RMO at Guidewire supports the professional services arm of the business, which has over 700 FTEs and a number of key partners and SIs that support our implementations. To give a sense of values or scale, PS generates revenues of over 200 million a year, or just over 20% of the company's overall revenue at over 900 million. So as a software company, some of the key measures are naturally, sales, license, ARR. But like many other companies with an embedded PSO, that organization wants to ensure it impacts the bottom line as effectively as possible in order to control its own destiny, so to speak. And in my view, RMO can most definitely support that mission. So to help our thinking on this topic, I wanted to remind us all of a foundational way of looking at RM, which of course is the just-in-time resourcing or jitter model from the RMI. We want to keep this in mind as we approach anything really related to our function, because of course it helps orientate, categorize, and formulate things for us quite easily. But when we're dealing with the entire organization or executives, we may want to elevate this to a rule of 3 in the foreground. And in this case, that is people, process, and technology pillars. And that's so we can kind of clearly and concisely articulate various ways of bringing value and capitalizing on opportunities. And we'll tie this to the groupings of KPIs and metrics a little later on. But for now, however, when we think of RM, we need to remember that there are both quantitative and qualitative measures that need to be factored in. Now, that being said, when it comes to executive support, I would lean more heavily on quantitative measures. In other words, and I'm going to change the phrase that you're all well aware of, put their money where your mouth is, okay? So providing context and things that make sense to those executives in quantitative measures really, really helps. And when it comes to the entire organization support, you may need a mix of both those quantitative and qualitative measures, where we can hit home for particular individuals, groups, or functions in the organization. So when we look to measure definitions, right, quantitative measures are, of course, objective, right? They involve numerical data that can be measured and analyzed statistically. They provide kind of concrete, quantifiable insights into various aspects of performance, efficiency, and outcomes, right? Examples would include financial metrics like revenue, cost savings, return on investment, as well as productivity ratios, utilization rates, and project completion times. On the other hand, qualitative measures involve non-numerical data, which are more subjective, right? These provide insight into the quality, the perceptions, and the experiences related to RM. So think of, an internal CSAT for your RMO that gauges your stakeholders' experiences, perceptions, and opinion of the quality of what you provide and how you provide it, right? Other items in this category would be, collaboration effectiveness, organizational culture, employee engagement, and so on and so forth. So the validity of both quantitative and qualitative measures depends on obviously the relevance to the specific goals, objectives, and context of the evaluation and the organization itself. Both have their strengths and limitations, as I've highlighted here, but they're often used together to triangulate findings that can validate and contextualize results to give a more nuanced and informative view, if you will. Although it is worth noting, you must know your audience. How you show value and how you position RM will be highly dependent on who you are talking to. And what I mean by that is, while you'll have established KPIs and relative consistency in how you provide insights into RM operations or the state of the business, how you approach it and the depth at which you go is highly dependent on the stakeholder, right? So at executive level, this may be the 10,000 feet or macro view, as opposed to a micro one with a direct stakeholder that is interested in very particular examples, scenarios, or measures. So we want to keep that in mind, okay? So in reviewing some of those kind of quantitative measures, here are some of the base things that we may consider for RM to show value. Cost savings, right? Measuring the reduction in costs related to effective resource management. Resource utilization efficiency and optimization. So assessing how effectively resources are being utilized to meet project or organizational goals. And they're typically measured through things like resource utilization rates, productivity ratios, but we want to quantify improvements in resource allocation and allocation processes. And when we think about that, we might think of, reducing idle time, minimizing bottlenecks, optimizing resource usage across projects or departments. So think of things like time to staff, your bench ratio, and time to value. Project performance then, evaluating the impact of resource management on project outcomes, such as completion times, adherence to budget, quality of deliverables, TCV, right, the total contract value. Are we making sure we absorb that revenue that's there on the table for us? And then return on investment. So that is based on resource management initiatives. So comparing the benefits gained against the costs incurred to implement those initiatives, but equally offsetting the cost of the resource management office itself. Now, this is one that's rarely mentioned. And I'd suggest to you that one of the goals of every RMO, and it goes back to Nick's point earlier on in terms of maybe some RMOs getting cut here and there within different organizations. I'd suggest to you that one of the goals of every RMO as a non-billable headcount function is to offset their own cost year on year. Now, it's not always achievable. It could be very difficult, in fact, but it should be a goal and something that you have in mind, whether that's through an increase in billable utilization, efficiencies to generate more revenue, or tracking project progress so well that you anticipate challenges and capitalize on staffing opportunities. Next one up is revenue generation and risk reduction. So quantifying the impact of resource management on revenue generation, whether that's through increased productivity, customer satisfaction, enhanced product or service offerings, and measuring the reduction in risks associated with resource shortages, over allocations or misallocations, because of course those would lead to fewer project delays, cost overruns, or quality issues. And then finally, we have attrition rates, right? So number of employees who left during the period divided by the average total number of employees during that period multiplied by 10. So let's put that into context. We know if 10 employees left during the quarter and the average total number of employees during that quarter was 200, the attrition rate will be 5%. So it's quite an important metric to track as well. So by looking at some of these quantitative measures, we can both effectively demonstrate the value of resource management and make data-driven decisions to improve efficiency and productivity. So in reviewing some of the qualitative measures, here's some of the base things we may consider here. Top one is the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and culture. So assessing the impact of resource management on enhancing collaboration and communication among teams, leading to better coordination, knowledge sharing, problem solving, interdepartmental swaps and staffing, and how ORM aligns to the organization's culture and values overall. Visibility and transparency kind of goes without saying, but we have it here anyway, right? So evaluating how ORM improves project or organization visibility by providing stakeholders with real-time access to information such as ORM operational metrics. So let's think, cancellation rates, extension rates, time to staff, but also organizational metrics. So, what's our capacity look like? What's our skills gap analysis? What's utilization sitting? And then we look towards agility and responsiveness, right? Measuring the organization's ability to adapt quickly to changes in resource demands, market conditions, or project priorities, enabling it to respond effectively to new opportunities or challenges. We want to see, obviously, improved decision-making, so assessing the impact of ORM on enabling informed decision-making. So basically leveraging what ORM knows and has at its fingertips and putting it to work for the organization, whether that's based on headcount increases or reductions, cross-training, peak demand load strategies, and so on and so forth. Stakeholder satisfaction is a big one. Gauging that stakeholder satisfaction with resource management and resource management practices. And you can consider things like responsiveness to resource requests, alignment of resources with strategic objectives, and overall project success. And then finally, employee empowerment and engagement. And we talk about two kind of, you say, retention and engagement. In this case, I'm saying empowerment and engagement, but measuring the extent to which resource management empowers employees by providing them with the tools, the resources, and the autonomy needed to perform their roles effectively, which of course leads to higher levels of engagement and job satisfaction. And being able to assess the impact on employee satisfaction and retention rates thereafter naturally leads to lower recruitment and training costs, and of course, higher productivity levels. So by considering these measures, organizations can gain a holistic understanding of the value of resource management beyond purely quantitative metrics, recognizing its broader impact, let's say, on organizational effectiveness, agility, and of course, satisfaction. So breaking this down to some fundamental KPIs that we know and love, I won't cover all of these in the interest of time, but I'll touch on a few, right? Naturally, utilization is key. And those of you familiar with RMI's table on moving utilization by just 1 point, depending on the size of the organization, has a profound effect on increases in marginal revenue and operating income. But equally, things like client utilization can also be useful, because if your billable utilization is sitting at 60%, let's say, but overall client utilization, so that's billable and non-billable activity for clients, is sitting at 85%, there may be questions about how you structure deals, how folks submit billable or non-billable time, or indeed how to increase billings and reduce that non-billable effort where appropriate. In the staffing space, then, we'd look towards some of what we mentioned already: time to staff or time to value for the customer, allocation efficiency and forecast accuracy as it relates to what was planned and what actually occurred. Now, it's important to note that, looking at actuals and retrospective analysis is always kind of focused on making improvements for the future and not wishing the past was different. So if anyone was, lingering on the past too long, you probably want to move them along, right? So learn from it, implement the appropriate changes, progress, and move on. Right? Profitability then, ORM generated revenue I mentioned. Not sure how many organizations track this today, but we actually implemented this this fiscal year quite easily. And it's important as it speaks to both proactivity and dollars, right? So we're tracking where there was no open request, where no one was reaching out for resources, but through proactivity, tracking of project progress, looking at gaps, looking at people who might be overburdened in terms of what hours they're submitting, and making a case for why this project requires more headcount, and effectively delivering that to generate more revenue. Rate realization, that's a metric that gives a percentage of target billing rates for consultants that are collected after discounts. So the rate realization industry average is about 79%, which technically means on average 21% of the time consultants are being billed at less than their actual billable rate. So the reason for calling this one out is Remember, not all KPIs coming from RMO are RM specific, meaning we need to look at the overall health of the organization and highlight what's important to them. Okay. Some general operational pieces then, your soft booking or hold rate as a percentage of the pipeline. That informs capacity plans and proactive staffing. Extension rates indicating successful allocation and increased billings. Cancellation rates and why particular requests were cancelled. You want to quantify them, right, in dollars based on criteria. Was this cancelled because we couldn't fill it by scope, by the geo, by the role, by the skill, and so on and so forth. So just a couple of ideas around some of our fundamental KPIs. So when it comes to showing value, though, we want to think of KPI development, right? And this should be strongly tied to the organizational's goals and their strategic objectives, and it should be agreed upon upfront. So what do I mean by that? What does success look like? And it looks different to different people and different parts of the organization. But I wanted to highlight some more maybe obscure, I suppose, KPIs that not everyone would think of to basically show that there's multiple ways of measuring success, right? I won't discuss all of these, but let's take two examples, right? Cross-training ratios. That would highlight the percentage of employees who are trained to perform tasks outside of their primary role or department. The higher the ratio, the greater the flexibility of the workforce, okay? Another one is utilization volatility. So that would track the variance in capacity levels over time. Obviously, the lower the volatility, the more stable the business pipeline, demand management, and resource suitability for assignment is. So here we can begin to kind of see how there are many ways of looking at KPIs, and I think it's very important that we identify some of these up front with execs and stakeholders, and obviously continue to develop them over time as the resource management function matures. Okay, so let's bring some of this together, right? Taking what we mentioned in terms of the just-in-time resourcing model and the rule of three with people, process, and technology. We need to aim at both quantitative and qualitative measures with a stronger lean into the quantitative across themes and categories that speak to both executives and the rest of the organization. So when we think of those categories, they include financial, customer satisfaction, operational efficiency, resource quality and performance, business development, and innovation and growth, right? There's probably many others. I just wanted to take some of the kind of high level ones. While most organizations don't want to necessarily suffer the consequences of not having an effective resource management office, they equally may resist the change, right? Which is to be expected. And again, it's our responsibility to facilitate their understanding and color the topic of resource management through their lens. And that, of course, requires communication. So when it comes to support within the organization, whether executives or stakeholders, we want to make sure we don't get caught up in an us versus them mindset and selling RM as an idea. What we want to be doing is leaning on what resonates, which is always going to focus on the issues and the opportunities ahead of the team themselves. So if talking about the impact RM can make doesn't work, talk about the impact of not having, right? So, I mean, if we think about RM planning activities, there's always a top-down and a bottom-up approach, right? So top-down is the executive. So what are the highlights? What does this mean financially? What's the return on investment? What's the cost-benefit analysis, right? And then bottom-up is the rest of the organization and its functions. So think of culture, think of people power, organizational variances, effective management, and obviously a positive contribution margin for those individual teams or functions. So let me head over to our takeaways in the interest of time, and I'll get through this pretty quick. First one, if it matters to them, it matters to us, right? This is about executive and organizational alignment and understanding their pain points, their concerns, their priorities, and working with those in mind, and also tying your metrics back to those topics. Next one is quantify, quantify, quantify. Always make a financial case to inform financial decisions, whether that relates to investment, support, or operational change. Okay. Contextualize. Data analysis should be done at depth, right? with the complexity removed thereafter so that we highlight data that is humanized and it's made as simple as it possibly can be. Don't forget, everyone interprets things differently, so don't leave that to chance. Explain what someone is looking at, why it matters, and what you suggest they need to do on the basis of that information. Remember the customer. It does not matter if that is internal or external. Every interaction matters. You and your team represent the function. Keep it positive, build meaningful relationships that can tolerate pushback and disagreement healthily, so that you have strong advocates that will speak about you and the function positively, even when you're not there. Be proactive. Don't wait for permission or to be asked to do something that might benefit the organization. Okay, be intentional and purposeful. Challenge the status quo with strategic thinking that is grounded in business intelligence and research and looks towards the future of that organization. Visibility and transparency. You want to aim to have that repeatable, efficient, and to have informative KPIs and metrics visible and transparent to the organization. These will be related to RM operations, but remember, it's an ecosystem. So will also relate to things outside of RM's direct control, but highlighting them actually increases the ability to elevate RM and prove its value. Next is lean into the opportunity. You are the expert. Don't shy away from it, right? Invest in research, networking, and both personal and professional development so that you continue to stay ahead of the curve and bring the weight of your knowledge to bear on the organization. And then finally, for those of you who will be at RMGS this year, I'll be doing a separate session on this, but RM Charter. So you want to develop an RM charter that is informative, aspirational, and impossible to ignore, essentially. Now, don't confuse this with a process doc, right? This is a foundational document that orientates the RM team, the stakeholders, and the executives. It highlights the benefits of RM, but it actually also enables you to secure the executive sponsor you require to be supported, to have a seat at the table, and to deliver value to the organization. So I know I probably ran over a little bit, so I'll pause there and get back over to Nick.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you taking the time and investment to put this together for us. A lot of great content there. And a great plug for RMGS if you want to jump to the next slide. And so if you guys loved what you heard right here with Gary, he gave a great plug for his session on the RMO Charter. And we have a lot of other great speakers that are planned for our 5th annual Resource Management Global Symposium. So this is a live event where we have people from around the globe coming together this year in Indianapolis, Indiana, April 23rd through 24th. So if you're not registered, there's still time to register. We would encourage you to at least check it out. You can go to the resourcemanagementinstitute.com and also find that on our page there as well. Additionally, I want to talk about RMCP for just a second. And so if you've thought about RMCP or maybe you're just hearing about it for the first time, I do want to encourage you to look into it. Look into the certification program. RMCP is the first of its kind certified professional skills development program that's exclusively for resource managers. And so would encourage you to attend or at least check the program out. The RMCP credential is recognized globally. We do have well over 1,000 RMCPs across the globe. It's also, as we interact and talk with other organizations, it's starting to become table stakes. And so some organizations are looking at credentials and seeing if folks have RMCP before even considering them as candidates. We have other organizations that are sending their folks through RMCP as a part of their onboarding into the resource management team. And so we deliver RMCP 3 different ways. We have a classroom session. Matter of fact, today is day 2 of a classroom session that's going on down in West Palm Beach, Florida. So you can do it live in classroom. We also have live virtually, so via Zoom. We have some of those sessions, and we also have it on demand where you can consume it 24/7. And so if you flip to the next slide, you can see our schedule for the rest of the year. So you can see there's a couple of locations for the classroom options, and then we also have the virtual instructor-led, those online classes there as well. So the virtual is 6 classes, so it's spread over 6 different sessions, roughly 2 hours apiece, just to give you an idea of timing versus the 3-day classroom. Then you have the on-demand version there as well. And so again, would encourage you to check it out. If you have questions about RMCP, definitely reach out to us. Would love to talk to you about that. And finally, I just want to give one more shout out and say thank you to our sponsors for this event, Big Time and Cantata. We appreciate their support in making this event possible. And I'll just wrap up. We're right at the end of our time. So I'll wrap up by saying thank you to all of you for investing your time and being here. Thank you again to Gary for investing time and energy in the RM community. And so we appreciate you taking some time to share with us today. And we hope to see you all again at a future event.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Gary.